we've spoken about the forgotten and popular anime that Cartoon Network's Toonami block has brought us, and some of the lesser discussed anime from their nightly Adult Swim blocks. So to complete this cycle, we want to take a look at the popular anime that built Adult Swim's reputation as a place to go for anime, their iconic anime, so to speak. We had Toonami for the kid and teen-friendly anime during the day on Cartoon Network, and a few shows that had to be edited, but Adult Swim gave us anime with no restrictions, so basically just blood and light swearing. They didn't go much beyond that. These anime were either broadcast all the time on Adult Swim, so it was hard to miss them, or something about their run just felt more noticeable than those other anime that ran for a few months and then had a few rerun cycles before disappearing after a year or two. We'll be focusing on anime that Adult Swim broadcast during the 2000s, prior to them rebranding Toonami in 2012, back when Adult Swim just had their own separate anime schedule. But it's fine if any of these shows eventually joined Adult Swim's Toonami block in 2012 or later. And joining me is the master of watching the same nostalgic anime over and over, Judgment Meter.
Oh, that's me!
Now, let's rewind with the top 10 iconic Adult Swim anime. Number 10, Wolf's Rain. Wolf's Rain is a schedule anomaly for me, since I could have sworn it was on all the time, but it completed its run and rerun cycles all within a year on Adult Swim, but something about it made it stand out to me as an Adult Swim classic. The show was about a pack of wolves trying to find paradise because the world is ending. This version of dystopia is just a dreary version of our world. Colors are muted, forests no longer exist, and wolves have allegedly been hunted to extinction, which is why the wolf pack escaping is central to the plot. Despite being wolves, we see them as humans for most of the series, in part due to the art of conveying animal travel as humans and making it easier for us to understand them, but it also relates to the plot. To avoid all enemies of wolves, such as hunters, the wolves create illusions to make them appear as humans. However, if they touch a human, like when a wolf has to rescue one, the disguise wears off, or when a human is drunk, he unintentionally sees through the disguise, so these are ways to add extra conflict during the journey. We also learn how these wolves ended up with the pack and what caused them to be shunned by their previous location.
There's Tobue, Kibe, Hige, Zume, and they're all named after wolf body parts, like claw, tooth, fang, and then something else.
Why'd you say fang so emphatically?
Because that's the one that I forgot earlier. There's also Blue. Blue is the lady dog wolf with the hunter. She's part wolf, part dog, but the hunter hates wolves. Conundrum? Yes, please. No, it's actually really, really sad. But she's very pretty.
The series is very dramatic with the wolves constantly on the run. There is little sense of joy, which is why the scenes where they dream of the paradise or just enjoy each other's company as sort of this family is a nice break from the action. There was a level of surrealness to the show that was also grounded somehow. It's hard to explain if you haven't seen it. My best example is there was a woman born from the flowers who moves like a flower in the wind. Despite its impact on my memory, it wasn't on Adult Swim for that long. It premiered on the Saturday Night Action block at the end of April 2004, near the start of the block at 11:30 p.m. It ran weekly until the end of its run, and showed the 4 direct-to-DVD OVA episodes right after. They did skip episodes 15 through 18 on Adult Swim, but those were pure recap episodes, so they were doing us a favor. Why did the producers even have so many recap episodes in the middle of just a 26-episode series? Reruns happened until March 2005, so within 12 months, Wolf's Rain was off Adult Swim's airwaves. And as I mentioned, I thought it reran a lot longer, and I don't know why. Maybe it was the unique nature of the show that made it stand out more to me, or maybe it was just because Adult Swim really seemed to like this one in advertising. Once again, at least to me. Not only did they put it towards the start of the lineup, but it seemed prominent in their group advertising. Like when they flashed all their series on screen, it was among the brightest. Or when they had one of those 1950s-style jingles, Wolf's Rain was right at the beginning. Even when promoting it, they mentioned it was from the creator of Cowboy Bebop to really hype it up. It was not by Shinichiro Watanabe, but the screenplay for Cowboy Bebop was by Keiko Nobumoto, who also wrote Wolf's Rain. Anyway, thanks to Adult Swim, Wolf's Rain is among my quintessential anime of the mid-2000s. Number 9, Eureka 7. Eureka 7 feels like it might belong in the forgotten category since I never hear anyone talk about it anymore, but it ran for so long on Adult Swim, it's hard for me not to remember it. It had 50 episodes and rarely ever had a week off when premiering. The art in the series was stunning, and it subverted what you would expect from a giant robot anime. The series is about finding hope in times of darkness, and has a message about treating the environment that we live in with respect. In the future, humans are now living in space colonies since the Earth has become too polluted and overrun by science-y coral stuff, but there is a corrupt military rising. The main character, Renton, thinks that he has a boring life and wants to join the rebel group Gecko State, which is led by his favorite athlete who specializes in lifting, a sport where you surf on different substances in the air.
And then they also just fly on hoverboards. It's like a rocket power type of thing, but in the future. Do the skateboards attach to their robots?
Yes, the robots surf like humans.
Sure.
But Renton soon learns after joining that it's not all the sunshine and rainbows that the magazine showed. The group has to fight the corrupt government forces with equally underhanded tactics, like taking hostages or smuggling. And even with the spectacle of giant robots and all sorts of machine warfare, the series looks at it in a realistic light of people having to fight other people in a war setting. Renton is horrified by it, but in finding hope, he finds more humanitarian solutions, like ways to attack by damaging machines without hurting the people inside. More importantly, he meets a woman named Eureka in the group, who he immediately falls in love with and is his biggest motivation to never give up. While fighting and lifting are aspects of the series, it's the character relations where the series truly shines. We learn about their relationship and Eureka's past as each mission and break takes place, and the visuals do wonders for all aspects of the plot. I also love the design of Anemone, one of the leaders of the villain military faction. There's a scene where she's just eating pure jam out of the jar furiously. I don't know, I just love something about how this defines her character.
I mean, I guess she likes jam how I like my peanut butter. I don't know if there's 2 seasons or 2 different arcs, but the animation changes so drastically from regular to super round. What's that about?
You know, I'd never noticed that. It shows the animation was done by Studio Bones the whole way through, but by the end of the series, I do see more of a roundness to the character designs. Adult Swim ran the series on the Saturday night action block starting in April 2006. It fluctuated between the midnight and 1 a.m. time slots, but it was consistent on that block for its entire 50-episode run, which made it feel so prominent. They never moved it out of the lineup, it just kept showing new episodes. The most interesting aspect of its run was the final episode. Adult Swim cut out the 5-minute epilogue of the last episode so it could properly fit into its time slot and not cut into whatever rerun was following it, which is a lot of content missing considering it was the end of the series. They got enough backlash where they replayed the final episode a week later, this time with no cuts. It showed enough people cared about this series and the network got the message. The series reran until the contract ran out in 2009, so running for about 4 years was longer than a lot of other anime fared on the block. When Toonami later became the official Adult Swim Saturday night action block in 2012, Eureka 7 was added to the initial lineup as a fun reprise of an Adult Swim classic. It ran its course later in the night of the block for about 50 weeks and then bowed out. Nice tribute to the series. Ever since the original Adult Swim run, the series has gotten a sequel series and some movies never seen on Adult Swim, so it got more modern attention than I expected. But for the original, nothing beat just having it in the lineup as a friendly face for a few years. Number 8. Samurai Champloo. Adult Swim showed a lot of anime that were around 15 to 30 episodes long, ran new episodes on Saturday nights or weeknights for a few months, and then had a rerun cycle or 2 before disappearing to make way for new or repeat anime. So the normal timeline was 1, maybe 2 years for an anime on Adult Swim. This tended to make these shorter anime more obscure in the long run, but for some reason, Samurai Champloo had a bigger impact on my memory where it's one of the main anime I remember from Adult Swim, despite having the standard run and only being rerun for about a year. And on the surface, there's a lot of reasons why. The action comedy mix, the soundtrack, the cast, and even had the same director as Cowboy Bebop. The series takes place in the Edo period of Japan with a modern twist. It follows 3 travelers who really don't get along, but they have to avoid the law. The main character, Mugen, is a guy who likes to pick fights and steal for the fun of it. He has an unorthodox fighting style where he uses a sword and breakdancing. He meets a more traditional traditional stoic samurai Jin in a tea house where they both kill bodyguards of the governor when the guards were going to harm a common man and the eventual third member of their trio. To avoid being sentenced to death, the waitress Fu agrees to help them escape if they help her find the man that she deems the samurai who smells of sunflowers. Then we see all their one-off adventures with the eccentric people they meet on their journey, each usually lasting for an episode or two. The dynamic is great since Mugen and Jin basically hate each other, they constantly want to fight, and Fu tries to be the one to keep everyone together. Mugen likes to take the route that ends in a fight with most people they meet, and Jin would be fine just letting him die, but he also likes a good fight, and Fu gets frazzled. There are so many great interactions, but my favorites are the detective whose sword is a saw, the grasslands that get burned that turn out to be a marijuana patch and they all get high, the European immigrant, and of course the baseball episode, one of the greatest sports-themed episodes of a non-sports anime. Check out my list about baseball anime episodes. What also added to the uniqueness of the series was the soundtrack being hip-hop inspired. Mixing it in with Mugen's dancing martial arts flowed extremely well, and Adult Swim knew how important this music was to the show's identity, so they featured a great remix of it in the advertisements, just showing the action scenes and letting the music do the work. As mentioned, it didn't really have any special scheduling on Adult Swim. The main quirk in the schedule was it premiered in May 2005, ran on Saturday nights, and they broke up the 26-episode series into two quote-unquote seasons. At episode 12, they took a break and advertised the rest of the series almost as if it was a new season when it returned with new episodes in November of that year. Then it had standard rerun cycles before going away at some point in 2006, but Shampoo later had a run on Adult Swim's Toonami in 2016. If you missed out on the series anytime it was on Adult Swim, it's a great one to catch up on now. Number 7. Lupin the Third Part 2. Lupin is an interesting case since I tend to forget that it ran on Adult Swim, but it ran longer than most other anime they showed, yet only about a quarter of the series was shown during its running, making its appearance on Adult Swim pretty impressive in hindsight. Lupin is an iconic series about a gentlemanly thief going on heists with his band of thieves with eccentric personalities and getting into antics with whoever they're trying to steal from. Each individual series or movie can play off a previous Lupin adventure or series, but also works as a standalone series. The specific version Adult Swim ran was Part 2, which was from 1977 but dubbed in 2002. If you need a general setup for an episode, it likely involves a large jewel that's begging to be stolen, but this season has a bunch of fun episodes overall. The ones that stick out to me involve stealing Napoleon's wine before the president gets it, stealing the mask of King Tut, and trying to stop a guy who wants to blow up the Leaning Tower of Pisa in order to intercept his ransom money. Being an episodic series, this was the perfect show to run at any time slot. You could just turn on Adult Swim randomly in the middle of the night and be able to follow whatever episode they were on, so the network took advantage of that for reruns. It ran nightly starting in January 2003, with new episodes on weeknights for the first 16 of the series, and then more premieres came starting in May 2003 until episode 27, when Adult Swim ran out of dubbed episodes. The dubbing studio, Pioneer, only had the first 27 episodes licensed to be dubbed at the time, leaving the other 128 episodes undubbed and unaired on Adult Swim, which was really a shame. This didn't stop Adult Swim from rerunning the episodes they had, but that's 3 out of the 4 seasons missing. Also, the third episode never aired on Adult Swim, so they only had 26 episodes in rotation. Yet somehow, the network kept rerunning it until 2007 when the rights ran out. I get that Lupin was popular overall, but usually when Adult Swim had any anime around 25 episodes, they'd rerun it for maybe half a year to a year, and it was off the network about a year or two after its debut. Even an anime like Case Closed, which had more episodes aired on the network than Lupin and the same overall appeal, was off the network after about a year. Eventually, Part 2 was dubbed up to episode 79, but those episodes were released outside of Adult Swim after it was off the air. Despite Lupin's issues in the past with Part 2 on Adult Swim, the 4th, 5th, and 6th series all had full Toonami runs on Adult Swim from 2017 onwards, so versions of the series eventually got proper runs. But still, I'll always have that mild frustration in the back of my mind that Adult Swim missed out on having a treasure trove of Lupin reruns. Number 6. Shin-Chan. Now this is an interesting case. Shin-Chan was a manga and anime that veered towards an older audience, had some crude humor, but still could be enjoyed on a family level, something like a Simpsons level of appropriateness. But the version that Adult Swim showed of Shin-Chan was wild. Bit of history. The series has a slice of life vibe to it about the 5-year-old Shin-Chan's adventures with his friends and family, all with a simplistic art style that looks like a kid drew it with crayon. It's charming. It's been running on TV in Japan since 1992, so by now there's over 1,000 episodes, meaning it will never see a proper dub if they dub it from the start. It will take way too long. It was first dubbed in English in 2001 for the UK and Australian Fox Kids lineups. These were family-friendly shorts that just took random Shin-Chan episodes and adapted them. It felt like a standard kids show. Crude humor was cut down. It was cute. Despite never airing in the US, it was dubbed in the US with a lot of notable US voice actors, headlined by Kath Soucie, giving us the true Rugrats experience by voicing Shin and his mother. Another dub was produced between that one and the one that Adult Swim ran, but for the sake of this entry, let's go to the Funimation dub. Funimation got the Shin-Chan rights in 2005, and they just kinda did their own thing with it. Like the previous dub, they just took random shorts and paired them together as 3 shorts per episode. However, this dub was clearly going for an adult audience, just adding in jokes about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and other things not kid-oriented. Plots still had that wholesome vibe to them, but in all the snappy dialogue, they crammed in as many jokes in there. Sometimes lewd, sometimes just about drugs, sometimes I don't even know where they were going, but they catch me off guard a lot. Even something as innocent as Shin-Chan's favorite hero, Action Kamen, was renamed Action Bastard for the dub, but something about the performance of the voice actor really did sell me on the energy here. I thought it was pretty funny how he played it straight. Some of the humor was just laugh at funny words, but I'm cool with a simple joke. Some jokes are pretty dated or poorly aged, so it was very hit or miss, especially now, but it was harmless. I always prefer a dub to be fully accurate with no script changes, but since Shin-Chan was over 500 episodes when Funimation acquired it, I don't mind this. In a way, it was perfect for Adult Swim, home of Space Ghost Coast to Coast and C-Lab 2021. They loved repurposing old kid-friendly shows for adult humor, and I guess it was a hit since Adult Swim aired the 2nd season of Shin-Chan. Or more, the 2nd season of the Shin-Chan that Funimation put together.
It's so cheery. It's like, yeah, I could just jive to this. I don't really have to pay attention. This is just soaking into my eye holes. It's easy watching. Very nostalgic of my childhood.
Does it count as our childhood if it was on when we were 13 or 14?
I know, right? I think I watched it in elementary school. No, middle school. No, maybe. I watched Inuyasha when I was in elementary school.
Yeah, but that fits the timeline. It was on Adult Swim 4 years before Shin-Chan was.
When I was in elementary school, my art teacher gave me 3 Shin-Chan rulers because she knew I liked anime, but she didn't know what they were.
I have a feeling that was an item created before this dub. For the first season, Adult Swim just aired new episodes on random weeks, with a week of new episodes in August 2006, then a week of new episodes in April 2007, then for 1 week in May, etc. I'm surprised it got attention with such a sporadic schedule, but when the 2nd season aired, it premiered with a new episode weekly alongside the other new anime on Saturday nights, starting in April 2008 all the way up until December of that year. They just put it in there between all the mainstream anime with a good time slot. It was between shows like Bleach or Death Note, which were more dramatic, so it was a nice break with comedy. That, though, was the end of Shin-Chan on Adult Swim, but 52 episodes was a hefty run. Funimation produced a 3rd season, but it never hit Adult Swim. They released it on Hulu in 2011, back when streaming anime was free on Hulu. Oh, how I long for the days again. With the last episode being a meta joke on how their dub was being canceled. So something stopped this version of the series, whether it was budget or fatigue or the rights holders. Funimation lost the license in the 2020s, so now none of the episodes can be streamed and the DVDs are hard to find, but it was definitely an experience. Adult Swim liked this kind of humor, so it was at the right place at the right time. Number 5, Bleach. I credit Bleach as the anime that held down the fort for the anime block on Adult Swim as it went through the highs and lows in the ratings. It was was there for the end of the Saturday night action block as we knew it. It was there for the period between the fall of Cartoon Network's Toonami and the rise of Adult Swim's Toonami, when anime was just kind of on the back burner for the network. And it was there for Adult Swim's revival of Toonami when anime was back at full force. It helped that the series was 366 episodes long, so it just stayed course and kept running weekly, which is pretty impressive, since anime that long never really survived on the network outside of Dragon Ball. And it also helped that Bleach had mainstream popularity, being one of the big three manga of the 2000s. It's about a high schooler who can see spirits named Ichigo, who gets the powers of a Shinigami, a group of warriors who defeat ghost-like entities called Hollow. Rukia, a Shinigami, gives Ichigo her powers when she's about to be killed in our world by a Hollow, so now Ichigo has to be the substitute for her after she loses her powers. This leads Ichigo to fighting some one-off monsters, but it's not as black and white as Shinigami vs. Hollow. We learn of other factions, like the Quincy, who also have a beef with the Shinigami and are among Ichigo's human peers, but among his peers are also allies, namely Chad, the strong guy, and Orihime, the healer. More importantly, the Shinigami become Ichigo's enemy when they sentence Rukia to death, so we get an arc where Ichigo and company go to save her by fighting off their whole society, the Soul Society. We learn about all their special weapons, the Zanpakuto, and eventually the Bankai, leading to fights with all these unique swords and whatnot. My favorites are Renji's snake sword and Gin's sword that just gets really long. As the arc goes on, Ichigo manages to get more allies from former enemies, and it's nice seeing all these characters team up. There's a lot of Shinigami, so it's a pick your favorite scenario.
Oh, I like Ukitake, because he had long white hair. He's very pretty, except he's not in any episodes. He's sick and he's never there. I like him, and I like his friend Shunsui. I was really only interested in Ichigo and his friends, and then the captains, and then whoever the villains were that day, but there were so many.
You know who's probably the most recognizable Bleach character?
I mean, I guess Ichigo, because he has the flaming orange hair. I was gonna say flaming orange Cheeto hair.
Well, maybe, but I was going to say Orihime because she's the leak spin girl.
Oh, that's so funny.
Do you have an opinion on Orihime versus Rukia as the main love interest?
Everyone wants Ichigo to end up with Rukia, which makes more sense because they have more chemistry, and she doesn't really do very much.
Whoa, no hating on Orihime. This is a pro-Orihime zone.
I'm so sorry. She's a lovely girl, lady, woman, Orihime.
And those were only the first two arcs we described. As mentioned, it's a 366 episode series, so there's a lot more story and filler adventures that don't matter to the plot. What always kind of surprised me is how persistent it was in the lineup on Adult Swim. It started in September 2006 alongside Eureka 7 and all the other anime at the time, and it just kept running. Even if the anime lineup got pushed back, Bleach was still new. Looking at Adult Swim's next longest anime, Inuyasha, maybe that will appear later on this list, which was 167 episodes, it had a few times where they aired 4 new episodes in a week to speed up the series so it could go into full reruns. However, Bleach just showed up every week, gave us a new episode, and left. Repeat process for about 8 years. It had a few breaks in new episodes, but still had short-term reruns during those times. Right before Toonami officially returned as Adult Swim's new anime block, Bleach was the only new anime, so as I said, holding down the fort. Then when Toonami became the anime block at the end of May 2012, Bleach was the headliner and continued showing up with new episodes. When they finally reached that last episode in November 2014, Toonami gave it a special promo to tell us the finale was coming to pay a little tribute. 2006 to 2014, what a run. I wish the second Bleach anime went to Cartoon Network. Number 4, Full Metal Alchemist and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. The two Full Metal Alchemist series were nice shows for Adult Swim. They were pretty long, so they had plenty of weekly content while still being good for rerun cycles, and the show had a good tone for Adult Swim. There was plenty of action for the action fans, too violent for Toonami, but it was very mature and dramatic when it needed to be, and still had comedy to break it up. As for the two series themselves, Full Metal Alchemist Original was an anime based on the manga while it was still being written, so the series follows some of it for maybe the first half, but explores those plot lines more before branching out into its own storyline since the writers did not know what direction the manga would go in. Brotherhood, on the other hand, follows the manga storyline more closely, so many of the events from the original anime move on faster in Brotherhood, and it has a different ending than the original anime. Brotherhood is not exactly like the manga, but you will get the full story with it, while the original anime just has to do their own thing. The series is about two brothers, Ed and Al, who try to bring their mother back from the dead with the sciencey, magicy alchemy. It fails where Ed loses his leg and Al loses his body, so Ed also has to give up his arm so Al's mind can reside in a living suit of armor while they look for a cure. We then follow the brothers' journey as they try to get their bodies back by mastering alchemy and working with the state military to battle the various homunculi that form when transmutation alchemy is misused, along with the other people who misuse alchemy for evil and the people who hate alchemy being used at all. As mentioned, the original anime lingers on the events of the early manga a lot more often, like showing the process for Ed taking the state alchemy exam, or having their main ally, Roy Mustang, be wary of Ed and Al at first so they have to build a bond with him before he trusts them. Characters like the infamous Sho Tucker aren't killed off right away to make plot lines for them later on, Lust gets more screen time to flesh her out as a villain, and there's more focus on the brothers' development to face their fears of the past and become stronger in the face of their enemies.
I remember that was like super hot stuff when I was watching it. Not that I knew anybody who watched anime, but like on the internet, everyone was watching it. And I never caught any of the episodes in order, so I wasn't totally sure what was happening.
Brotherhood still had elements of that, but the brothers tend to go into missions more ready for action and had more support from leaders like Roy Mustang, so they don't feel as alone in the world as they did in the original anime. Shoutouts to Winry though for always being on their side. While Brotherhood gives you a complete story, I like watching both anime, since the more fillery scenes of the original give us greater character building that you just kind of assumed happened off screen in Brotherhood. And that's not a bad thing about either anime, it's just something I appreciate, but the pacing and completion of Brotherhood is what makes it the go-to anime if you only have time for one. But I started the series with the original on Adult Swim, so I was set up to watch both anime. Not sure what I would think if I just watched Brotherhood though. Both anime had pretty standard Adult Swim runs. The original started in November 2004 as a part of the weekly Saturday anime block, usually at 11:30 or midnight, had a break in the middle with premieres finishing up by 2006. While it didn't rerun much after it concluded, Brotherhood picked up the mantle in February 2010 and became a familiar new series during a somewhat dying anime block on Adult Swim. It got a nice midnight premiere time slot, took a break in August, and came back in January 2011 to power through the rest of the series. What's funny is it went into a normal rerun cycle after it concluded, but in the middle, Toonami returned on Adult Swim, so Brotherhood's Toonami debut episode was just episode 32. If anyone started watching Brotherhood because of the Toonami return, I hope you were able to understand what was going on. Number 3, Inuyasha. If there's any anime forever linked with Adult Swim, it's Inuyasha, the anime they aired the most. They got the rights to air it around 2002, and never stopped until their 12-year contract ran out in 2014. And this YouTube channel is probably forever linked with it too, since I have a co-host who uses Kagome screenshots for avatars, and we did 2 Inuyasha videos, which were fun. We should do more.
I have for since been addicted to Inuyasha. Thank you, Toonami.
Adult Swim.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Adult Swim. I am now adhered to the lore of the Yasha.
And now it's time for a rapid-fire plot summary. High schooler Kagome falls into a time-traveling well to the feudal era, finds out that she's the reincarnation of a priestess, releases a half-dog demon, the titular Inuyasha, breaks the Shiko no Tama, scattering jewel shards all over the world that they have to collect, gets a crew of other feudal fellows, also has to deal with the angry specter of the priestess, a demon who loves her, and his small group of servants, one of which despises him. He wants the jewel for himself, and there's other random enemies that appear for an episode or two. Also, there's a wolf guy and Inuyasha's full demon brother, and Kagome can freely travel between the present and the past, so we get funny at-home adventures in the middle, and somehow she avoids timeline issues by bringing modern things back to to the past. The anime had 167 episodes, so there was a lot to it. The combination of action and romance hit some key demographics, so it was a hit and was a pillar of anime tastes from the 2000s. Adult Swim started showing it at the end of August 2002 on a weekly basis on their Saturday night action block, right at the beginning at 11 p.m., a good time slot. It kept doing its thing, sometimes even having 2 new episodes on a premiere night, but they randomly switched to daily new episodes for a few weeks in January 2003, and stopped showing new episodes in February at just episode 36, which was in the middle of a plotline where Kagome was kidnapped, so I'm not sure why they took a break right there. Then when they brought back new episodes in September 2003, new ones were aired nightly on weeknights for a few weeks, and long story short, new releases waffled between being on weeknights for a few weeks or once a week on the Saturday block, and just when it looked like they would consistently finish off the series with weekly Saturday releases towards the tail end of the series, they stopped new episodes entirely in August 2006 at episode 157, when Inuyasha learned his last major attack, Adamant Barrage. They eventually aired the final bunch of new episodes in October 2006 during Inuyasha's normal rerun time slot on weekdays, but there were only 10 episodes left when they stopped before. Why couldn't they just give it a shot with the other Saturday night anime to end the series instead of just dumping the episodes between other reruns? It made this long-standing series for the network feel like it went out with a whimper.
Oh, wow. You know what? I didn't have a DVR, so I would put my VHS in and I would tape all the episodes. Also, I wanted all the episodes, so I would watch them on my VHSs, my homemade VHSs, over and over again, because I was that cool.
Do you know where those tapes are now?
I don't remember specifically. You know what? I probably still have them in my closet, labeled, because I'm that cool. Also, the theme songs of Inuyasha were always the best, and I don't think Adult Swim bought the rights to the openings, so I only saw the openings on the Adult Swim website, which they had.
Didn't they just broadcast like shots of the opening but with generic background music from the series instead?
I don't think they even had the images. I think they just did this is what happened on the previous episode, and then they showed this is what the episode's called on that like red background. But I remember watching the opening to the first season over and over and over again on their website.
Do you still hate Kikyo?
You know, as I've gotten older, I've cared less about Kikyo and just sort of accepted it. But probably if I watch it again, I'll be like, damn you.
I'm surprised how it could keep an audience with the constant schedule changes, though it never truly left, since Adult Swim just kept rerunning the whole series, seemingly every week until 2014 when they lost the contract. Even when I mentioned all those breaks between new episodes, Adult Swim was still airing the episodes they had previously aired, so you had plenty of chances to catch up. If one thing was certain in this universe, you could get Inuyasha reruns at 5 a.m. Part of the reason was this show was appropriate enough for Adult Swim's early morning time slots when kids could be up early, but still edgy enough where they couldn't quite show it during Cartoon Network daytime hours, since it has blood and Inuyasha says damn. It was allegedly initially slated for Toonami, but something made the network keep it on Adult Swim, possibly due to how much content would have had to be edited for daytime hours, though that finally came into fruition once Adult Swim combined with Toonami in 2012. Even though it was rerun cycle number 1 million for the series, it felt like a fresh coat of paint seeing it with all the Toonami bumpers. Funnily enough, it never finished its official Toonami run since March 2014 was the end of the contract for the network, and it probably wasn't worth the money to keep the reruns going, so they just ended this rerun cycle of Inuyasha in the middle of the 5th season. Made sense, but it truly felt like the end of an era. Later that year, Adult Swim Toonami did show the second series, The Final Act, which finished the story, and years down the road, Toonami showed the sequel series Yashahime, but neither could live up to how much the original series ran on the network. It was entertaining how much they ran it in retrospect. It just seemed so automated, but I like how it outlasted other anime on the network and had the potential to keep on finding new audiences. Like, what was it like for a teen in 2010 discovering this anime on TV when no other anime from the early 2000s was airing. In the end, I don't think we'll ever see Adult Swim run an anime again like they did with Inuyasha. Number 2, Cowboy Bebop. This is worthy of a number 1, and it was basically tied with what I chose for number 1, so if it's your number 1, I agree. Cowboy Bebop was the first anime on Adult Swim, and while first does not automatically mean the best, Bebop lived up to expectations by being the best and paved the way for more mature anime on the network. We already knew anime was successful with the younger demographic during the daytime Toonami lineup, but this was really a chance to expand the kinds of anime that they could show. Unlike other Adult Swim anime that ran in anime-specific blocks or alongside other anime on weekdays, Bebop premiered on the original Adult Swim block when it was only twice a week as the only anime. It was alongside Adult Swim originals like Space Ghost and Sealab, and thankfully it was a success, and it's pretty easy to see why. Cowboy Bebop was one of those anime that's been discussed up, down, backwards, and forwards all over the internet, so it's gotten hyped up plenty, but the combination of the animation, crew of characters, jazz and blues inspired soundtrack, and varying storylines drove it to success. The series was great at plot lines of many genres. One episode can be action-oriented, the next can be pure drama, mixing comedic episodes in there, and they even had some horror suspense when they felt like it. Like that episode with Pierre LaFou is one of my favorites with how they frame the murders with these dark colors and shading. Hell, I love the whole series. Even the weaker episodes I still find joy in. The series was about bounty hunters in space after humans colonized it, so they went everywhere with all the crazy characters and different cultures you can meet in space.
I think it's the show that not many people have anything bad to say about it. It's just well written, the animation's good, it's not too long, it wraps up appropriately, it's good storytelling.
With so many aspects of the series hitting on all cylinders, it got the ratings and became a cornerstone of Adult Swim's lineups forever. Besides being on the initial lineup in September 2001, it became a recurring member of both random weeknight lineups and the inaugural Saturday Night Action Block anime lineup in February 2002. As mentioned with Wolf's Rain and Samurai Champloo, Cowboy Bebop was a good name drop to hype up an anime if any of the directors or writers from it were involved in other series shown on Adult Swim. And of course, Bebop got regular showings on Adult Swim's Toonami in 2012 and later. It's right at home there. The success of Bebop on Adult Swim as the initial anime was a good indicator that viewers wanted more anime aimed at older audiences. Would we have gotten those other more mature anime on the network if Bebop failed? Probably, but maybe not to the extent that we saw all the new anime. Regardless of how much it moved the anime needle, its influence is monumental. Honorable mentions: Trigun. This was basically number 11. I really needed more entries for this list since I have just as many fond memories of this series as I do other anime we discussed. My favorite character is the guy with the Punisher gun. Ghost in the Shell standalone complex. If Trigun is number 11, then this is 12. I was waffling between these two, Champloo and Wolf's Rain, to make the list. When this came out when I was in middle school, I didn't even know Ghost in the Shell was a movie first, so this was my original exposure to the franchise. The Big O. Since this was on my iconic Toonami anime list and I discussed its role on Adult Swim over there, I didn't want to duplicate my entry from that video, so check that one out if you got the time. We also spoke about it in our Christmas anime list and our Butler list, so if you haven't seen those videos too, I can't stress it enough, but we love this anime. Though I do want to talk more about the Big O in the future, and I have some ideas. Code Geass. This is another anime I could have sworn was on the block longer. Durarara. Like Bleach and Brotherhood, this was a later Adult Swim anime before the Toonami revival that held down the fort for the new anime block coming in. And Gigantor and Astro Boy. I love how Adult Swim had these super classic anime in the vault and used them for that 5 AM filler time slot. As with the Big O, I did not want to repeat an entry from another video, but I did discuss Gigantor on my forgotten Toonami anime list since it had a brief Toonami run. Anyway, time for the top pick. For number 1, it was a tough choice. While Cowboy Bebop became synonymous with anime on Adult Swim, they only had 26 episodes and a movie to show. With this pick, Adult Swim had even less episodes, yet somehow made it feel longer and adopted it as their own. Number 1, Fooly Cooly. Fooly Cooly, abbreviated FLCL, is a direct direct-to-DVD OVA in Japan that Adult Swim acquired the rights to air on TV in 2003. It was a 6-episode short series that could be enjoyed on various levels. It's got action, fluid animation, art style changes, a mystery, and metaphors about growing up and adulthood. When I was a teen, I liked the cool fighting and mature humor. When I was older, I liked analyzing the deeper meaning in everything, like all the parallels about how becoming accustomed to bitter drinks was how the show portrayed maturity, or how large eyebrows was a metaphor about how a character covered up his insecurities. And then when I was older than that, I went back to turning off my brain when watching it and saying, "Ooh, art," at all the fun sequences. But still, I appreciate the series had all these double meanings behind everything. Part of the plot is just a vehicle for all the astounding animation, but to summarize it in a few sentences, Naoto is a kid on the cusp of puberty who thinks he's more mature than other kids his age and is constantly bored in the town where nothing ever happens. Then something happens. A reckless driver named Haruko is an undercover space cop of chaos and views him as the perfect vessel for her portal to robots and other wacky technology from the mysterious location Medical Mechanica, which she creates on his forehead with her bass guitar. Haruko monitors Naoto by living with his family, who's a bit too comfortable with this stranger. Robots and enemies emerge that Naoto and Haruko have to fight, tying in with the more mundane activities that started the episode, like the school play or an airsoft gun fight or even their own baseball episode. Then the interstellar investigators catch wind of Haruko's issues and attempt to turn Naoto against Haruko, since she's ultimately manipulating him to get whatever she wants from this portal involving the robot-like creatures. Is it love? Is it ultimate power? Watch and find out.
She's not a nice person. I'm very sad for Naoto. Nothing good happens to him in this show. Everything sucks. Everything sucks for him.
Since I don't want to give away every bit of the plot and part of the appeal is the art, I'll just leave off the plot synopsis there. There's plenty more to discover with the various mechs and ladies in Naoto's life and the investigators. While the plot has a reputation for being convoluted, it's pretty logical at its core, but it's covered in plenty of bells and whistles to lead you off track. As mentioned, part of the fun of these confrontations are for the animation, characters running up giant mechs and dodging missiles, the swings of bats and bass alike, and even the smaller scale bullet fights between the human-like characters all have great fluidity to them. There's way too much to cover, and not only fights, characters hanging out and just sitting on the porch have crazy animation, and of course there's that famous manga panel art style for a scene. In addition, there are plenty of references to other Japanese and Western pop culture, so if anything seems out of place, there's likely a reason. Some of the short sequences were meant to feel like a music video, since music is key to Fooly Cooly, being performed by the alt-rock band The Pillows, and it cannot be understated how much of their music is in the DNA of Fooly Cooly, with the show having so much wacky stuff behind it, while still honoring animation of all kinds. Adult Swim loved it. It had a humble premiere on Adult Swim, just being aired on weeknights in August 2003, meaning in just 6 days within 2 weeks, the series completed its full run. While it could have just faded away after a few rerun cycles, it never did. Adult Swim reran it so often and with much fanfare, sometimes on weeknights, sometimes weekly on Saturdays. They did all they could to make sure it reached audiences of all kinds. I can't find a clip of it, but in one of their Q&As from commercial breaks, they said Fooly Cooly was their favorite anime to run and they would run that non-stop if they could. Even in 2010, when you would have thought 7 years of rerunning a 6-episode series ran its course, they aired the uncut version of episode 6 in March for a bit of never-before-aired content. The unexpected resilience of this series on the network is why I ultimately chose it to be number 1. On the surface, it probably had no business getting this much attention, but Adult Swim really put it into their own hands to make it a hit, and even managed to make more. In 2018, Adult Swim collabed with the original Fooly Cooly production studio, Production IG, to make 2 new seasons of Fooly Cooly, with new protagonists each season, and Haruko returning for more antics. And they were okay. I like some specific moments from from each season, and I appreciate how they tried keeping the vibe.
What I liked about the original Fooly Cooly is it left us very confused and trying to figure out what it all meant. And then the next two, we were just wondering what happened. I don't think it needed sequels.
And then we got 2 more seasons in 2023, but I haven't watched them yet, so I can't comment. Maybe I'll go into my thoughts about all of those in another video, but for the sake of this topic, it was more akin to how much Adult Swim embraced their love of Fooly Cooly. They took an OVA that might have been stuck as obscure media and made it one of their staples, which is why it's worthy of a number 1 on this list. Now, what did you think? Were all these series synonymous with Adult Swim, or did we accidentally bury some classics? And what are some of your favorite anime shown on Adult Swim, whether we discussed them or not? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and we will see you in the next video.